Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, I think some of the level of frustration I think you're hearing from members here today is because many of the members on the Judiciary Committee have done, as you're well aware, multiple border visits. And I think oftentimes the way it's characterized or the way it's been presented by yourself and sometimes members of your team doesn't necessarily match up with what we see on the ground on these visits. So let me ask you this though, Mr. Secretary, on one of those visits last week, there were members of this committee that were down at the border in San Diego at the site that's oftentimes referred to, I guess, as Well Draw. And on this visit, as well as other members that were with me, the issue of human trafficking continues to come up. And I feel strong about it because I think it's a driving force in just about everything that you could characterize it as or what it kind of touches. It's all encompassing. So, you know, the high likelihood of release is what's motivating more and more people around the globe to put themselves in the hands of criminals, which is the big part of, I think, what's creating the issue at our southern border. I'll just say, easy access to the United States, it's just irresistible that you're going to continue to have individuals, especially from the southern hemisphere, continue to want to come to America. And if we don't get control of what happens to those individuals once they hit that southern border, I don't think this issue is going away anytime soon. So, I mean, I think we can agree that human trafficking, it's clearly illegal. I think you would agree with that, right?
Of course.
And we can agree that human trafficking it's real. It's really happening out there. We hear about it all the time, I think, when we're at the border. Or even on the backside, law enforcement back in our districts. You know, I'm from the 5th Congressional in Wisconsin, and we hear about it all the time. It might take the form of a local truck driver who's somehow comes in contact with it. Law enforcement finds out about it later on. So it's a terrible thing. I think we can agree. And I think we can agree that many of the illegal aliens that are coming across right now are being smuggled or being ushered through by coyotes, as we just heard about. And it was somewhat demonstrated to us again and again every time you're at the border. So since we agree on those kind of small sets of facts, let me just go back to the big question. Why aren't we finishing the wall? I mean, what we saw in San Diego were gaps and then stories of materials that had been there on the ground, and then suddenly Border Patrol agents noticing that someone had come and picked up those materials, and where did they go? There was a kind of a mystery that was in place for some time, and then they found out later that those materials were shipped to Texas. So, you know, I know it's kind of the big question, but why aren't we finishing the wall? And then I can't believe that it wouldn't help funnel so that agents would know who's coming and going on the border, which is probably half the battle. Not necessarily sealing off America on the southern border, but getting control of it. And then just based on human trafficking, which I said earlier is what I consider more of a motivator. There's got to be a reason for people to try and usher individuals who clearly don't have the wherewithal on their own back and forth. And then the other thing, not to mention even the illegal drugs, which is probably another great motivator in this whole thing. So can you answer that for me? Answer the simple stuff. Why aren't we finishing the wall? And why aren't we making an attempt to clearly control and close the border right now?
Number of points, Congressman. Number one, the funds used to build the wall, not the most effective use of those funds in achieving border security, number one. Number two, I've approved approximately 68 projects to complete gaps and gates. Number three, we've intensified our efforts against the smuggling organizations for precisely the reason you articulate. Four, the smuggling organizations spread misinformation, and it's why we counter that misinformation.
I'm going to cut you off right there. I got one more question. Let me just
The
jump.
gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Escobar.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you,
there was 1
Mr.
second left when
Chairman.
I tried to ask the
Ms.
question.
Escobar.
Can I get my time back?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Escobar.
Mr. Chairman,
Restart the clock.
thank you so much.
I cut him off for the
Secretary
second time.
Mayorkas, thank you so much for being here.